KPBS On Demand is supported by Splatero, helping homeowners pay off debt by offering streamlined access to your home's equity with no additional monthly payments or new debt. Splatero provides a lump sum payment in exchange for a share of your home's future value. Pre-qualification is available at splatero.com.
Welcome back to another edition of listener-supported KPBS Cinema Junkie podcast. I'm Beth Accomando. Today, we're going to talk about all things noir. And here's a little something to put you in the mood.
It was a hot afternoon, and I can still remember the smell of honeysuckle all along that street. How could I have known that murder can sometimes smell like honeysuckle?
I think I'm in a frame.
Don't sound like you.
I don't know. All I can see is the frame. I'm going in there now and look at the picture.
A black pool opened up at my feet. I dived in. It had no bottom.
So you're a private detective? I didn't know they existed except in books, or else they were greasy little men snooping around hotel corridors.
I thought detectives were heavy drinkers.
No. Well, some of them are. Some of them just encourage other people to drink.
What you tell me was engraved on that anklet?
Just my name.
As for instance?
Phyllis.
Stalling, honey?
What do I call you besides stupid?
Stupid will do if you don't bruise easily. Otherwise, you might try Danny.
Can't you even feel sorry for me?
I'm not going to try.
Jeff.
Look, just get out, will you? I have to sleep in this room.
Don't ever change, Tiger. I don't think I'd like you with a heart.
Keep asking for it and you're gonna get it. Plenty. I told you to shove off. Shove off.
People lose teeth talking like that. If you want to hang around, you'll be polite.
That evens us. Now fold your hands or I'll fold them for you.
You talk big, mister.
I tell you right out, I'm a man who likes talking to a man who likes to talk.
Swell. Will we talk about the blackbird?
You just sit and stay inside yourself. You wait for me to talk. I like that.
I never found out much listening to myself.
I'm afraid I don't like your manner.
Yeah, I've had complaints about it, but it keeps getting worse.
I don't mind if you don't like my manners. I don't like them myself. They're pretty bad. I grieve over them long winter evenings, and I don't mind you ritzing me or drinking your lunch out of a bottle. But don't waste your time trying to cross-examine me.
Hold tight to that cheap cigar of yours, Keys. I killed Dietrichson. Yes, I killed him. I killed him for money. And for a woman. And I didn't get the money, and I didn't get the woman.
Since I'm co-presenting a year of noir in San Diego at the Digital Gym Cinema called Noir on the Boulevard, I wanted to devote an entire podcast to film noir. And there's no better person on earth to speak to than Eddie Muller. So I'm thrilled to have as my guest a man who's known as the Czar of Noir. He's also the host of TCM's Noir Alley, author of numerous books, including Gun Crazy, The Origin of Outlaw Cinema, founder and president of the Noir Foundation, and he oversees and hosts Noir City, which is enjoying its 16th year and will kick off on January 26th. So, welcome, Eddie.
Well, thank you for having me, Beth. I'm going to tell you right off the bat, I'm a little jealous. You're Noir on the Boulevard. I mean, that's pretty Tony. I mean, we're just Noir Alley at TCM. You know, you got the whole boulevard. That's pretty good.
Well, our cinema is located on El Cajon Boulevard, and they brand it as the Boulevard, so it was kind of an easy one to pick for a title.
Very good. Very good. And I want to stress I thank you for that lovely introduction. And the Noir City Festival that you refer to is taking place in San Francisco. Just to be clear about that.
Yes, and we're going to talk about your film festival in a little more detail coming up. But first, I wanted to start with a clip from Gun Crazy, because Peggy Cummins, the star of that film, just passed away.
When are you going to begin to live? 4 years in reform school, then the army? I should think they'd owe you something for a change. What's it got you being so particular?
Look, let's not argue. I'll hock my guns.
It'll give us enough dough to make another start.
There isn't enough money in those guns for the kind of start I want. But I want things, a lot of things, big things. I don't want to be afraid of life or anything else. I want a guy with spirit and guts. A guy who can laugh at anything, who'll do anything. A guy who can kick over the traces and win the world for me.
Look, I don't want to look in that mirror and see nothing but a stick-up man staring back at me.
You better kiss me goodbye, Bart. Because I won't be here when you get back. Come on, Bart. Let's finish it the way we started it, on the level.
You knew her well. You wrote a book about the impact of the film that she so memorably starred in. What was her impact on noir, and what's kind of her legacy?
Well, it's probably one of the great performances in all of film noir, certainly when it comes to female roles, I'd say. I mean, I've described that character and Peggy's performance as the most ferocious femme fatale in film noir. And I think that pretty much sums it up. And it is sad. This is actually the first time I've talked publicly about it since Peggy passed away. And I had just seen her in November. My wife and I took a trip to London, and we visited with Peggy, and she was in great spirits. And we were making plans to do more of our travel to various festivals around the world. You know, introducing a new generation of people to this film, and Peggy was always such an important part of that show. You know, so that is her cinema legacy, really, and she's not alone in being one of those actresses that sort of the legacy will all revolve around this one movie. I mean, she made a lot of other really good films, but it's this one that stands out. But for me personally, it was just getting to know her as a very special person who was so not a star and was so down to earth. And you know, when we go to London, we'd stay in her flat, and she'd cook for us. And she was just a charming woman who taught me more about just dignity and how to go through life and how to age gracefully. Lessons that the movies don't necessarily teach you, but I felt very, very fortunate to know her.
You mentioned the word ferocious in defining her performance, which I think is really accurate. What was it about her that kind of made her just leap off the screen in that role?
I think she just gave it her all, really. I mean, she was so not that person. The character as written was described as a delicate prairie flower. That was written in every iteration of the script. There was that term. The whole crux of it was that there was this tiny little woman who loved her sidearms and wasn't afraid to, you know, she wanted action. And I think a big part of why she was able to give so much is that she had left Hollywood. I mean, this really was the last film she made in America. She'd come to America. She was going to be groomed by Daryl Zanuck at 20th Century Fox to be the star of this big, colossal production, Forever Amber. They started making the movie, and then he pulled the rug out from under her and said, there are various stories about why she was removed from the production. Either she was too young to be doing the things she was doing on screen, which would get the film in trouble with the Legion of Decency, or she just wasn't sexy enough, in Zanuck's opinion. And so she had left and gone back to England. At the last minute, the King brothers, who produced Gun Crazy, said, yeah, Peggy Cummins, we'll get her to play the part, because they didn't have an actress for this role. Knowing that this was it, that she was going back to England and she was going to get married and she wasn't sure that she was going to continue acting, I think she just turned it all loose in this performance. There was nothing, you know, there was no going back. It's like, I'm giving it everything.
Well, I want to backtrack a little bit to talk about noir in a kind of broader terms, just in case there are any people out there who are not familiar with it or want to learn a little bit more about it. But for you, kind of what are the elements that really define noir? What are the things that a film really needs to have to be classified as noir?
Well, that's an interesting way of looking at it, and it's a lot of people approach it that way. Like, you know, stylistically, there has to be, you know, it takes place at night. There's rainy streets. Guys have to be wearing hats. You there's got to be a femme fatale lurking around somewhere. That to me, that's all window dressing. The real essence of it is that film noir was an artistic movement in Hollywood, and a lot of it had to do with the business having gone through the Depression and then immediately World War II, and the movies had to do their part. They had to be uplifting and have a moral to the story that was good for the public. And in reality, there were all of these artists who wanted to write more realistic stories who were sort of kept from doing that in the movie business during the 30s and 40s. I'm going to say like 1934 to 1944. That was the movie business, right? And I think that film noir was really born of the artists themselves saying, well, now can we finally present an alternative to Happily Ever After? And the place they were able to do that most comfortably and conveniently was in crime films, because they were genre pictures. They weren't all B movies, but the moral watchdogs in Hollywood didn't pay as much attention to genre pictures as they did to the big A movies that had the higher budgets and got all the attention and the awards and all that stuff. So this whole movement of films began that reflected this alternative view of reality, if you will, a much darker, more cynical, more menacing view of the world. And it was reflected in the scripts, the direction, the cinematography, the acting. Big stars would say, well, I want to play the bad guy for a change. It changed careers. It changed the look of films. It ate away at the production code so that movies sort of grew up. Like, it's not going to always end well. So that's really what the significance of film noir and the importance of film noir. And I really believe that these films stay relevant today because, much more jaundiced, cynical audience today, in many respects, can look back at these films and say, they don't see them as being nostalgic or something. Like you can see the underpinnings of our modern world in these films.
You talk about window dressing separate from kind of what defines it for you, but I think that what you're addressing is this kind of this notion of the tone and the themes, and those are the things that I think really do define noir. I mean, to me, it's kind of like that gray area. It's always about, things that are not clear cut. There's so much of this gray area in those films and moral ambiguity, and that's what I found so fascinating about them. So, and also the other thing about that, I was looking at your list of films that you've got coming up for Noir City, and I'm not sure if there's any other genre, maybe horror, but that has just the titles alone are just so wonderful. I mean, you've got I Wake Up Screaming, Among the Living, This Gun for Hire, Quiet Please.
That's two movies, by the way. I Wake Up Screaming and Among the Living, not I Wake Up Screaming Among the Living.
Although that would be an interesting one.
Well, sometimes I pair movies as a double bill just to see them on the marquee.
But the titles are great, and they seem to, whether or not they tie directly into what the plot or the story is about, hearing these titles, and if you look at some of the posters, reading some of the taglines, it's absolutely irresistible. I mean, how can you not want to see these films?
Well, you totally get it, Beth. I mean, they knew what they were doing, and honestly, that is a major part of the appeal. Is that style? It just draws people. There's so many artists today, visual artists, musicians, that are all drawn to noir for those very reasons. The fabulous language in these movies, the slang, all of this stuff has never lost its appeal. It refuses to go out of style, Yeah, you hit it right on the head.
Now, a lot of noir is very rooted, or noir itself is kind of very rooted in literature. There's this whole kind of hard-boiled crime fiction where a lot of these films kind of have their roots. How did that impact it?
Well, it's good of you to recognize that, because I really do believe that the movement itself really kind of happened in the late 20s and the 1930s. But when Hollywood asserted the production code in 1934, it was always there, but they didn't really enforce it until 1934. And they said, well, we're not going to show these things on the screen. It kept a lot of the literary works that were the underpinnings of noir from reaching the screen. I mean, a classic case in point would be The Postman Always Rings Twice, which James M. Cain wrote in 1934, and MGM bought the book in 1935, but it took them 11 years to get it onto the screen because it was just too tough. It was too tough and too sexy and too raw, and it's like, we can't make a movie out of that. But there are a lot of books like that, and so these writers who were extremely influential in the 30s, the Dashiell Hammetts and the James M. Cains and the Edward Andersons and Horace McCoys and these people, they had done their work in advance of the movement happening in Hollywood, and then when they sort of cross-pollinated with this visual style that developed thanks to a lot of expat European directors who came to this country who sort of had the perfect visual corollary for what these guys were putting on the page. It was pretty. That was what fomented this movement.
And then you even had writers like Raymond Chandler writing screenplays as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, The Blue Dahlia. That was his original screenplay. I don't know if Chandler was a particularly great screenwriter, to be honest with you. I've read his original screenplay for The Lady in the Lake, and it's bizarre. It's like, wow, this guy is just refusing to write a screenplay. He's like spending 8 pages on a conversation with the secretary, and then he gets to the point of the scene in page 9. I'm sure the check was for the same amount of money, but wow, he was wasting a lot of time.
One of the things we're doing with our film series is we're focusing on films that do specifically have literary roots, films that were adapted from books. And 2 of them were by women, which is not that common, but there were some women noir writers.
More common than you would think, yes. And I'm glad you're doing that. If you take a really close look at the lineup of films that I'm presenting at the Noir City Festival in San Francisco, there are a lot of women involved in the creation of these movies, either as the writers of the source novels, as writers of the screenplay, writers of the stories upon which the films are based. It might be a magazine series or something. Yeah, it's something that I've really taken a very keen interest in lately because I've sort of discovered that over the years, film, and I'm going to put this in quotes, scholarship, has been entirely driven by men. And so the idea of what is film noir, that's all been set up and decided by men. And it always amazed me as I watched more and more of these films that there were certain movies that were left out of the discussion. Basically anything starring Barbara Stanwyck or Joan Crawford was just not discussed as film noir. Maybe Mildred Pierce would sneak in. But it was almost as if these guys were saying, well, if a woman is the lead, it's not really noir. Because we know that film noir is about men being destroyed by evil women. That's the point of it, right? And I could not disagree more. So, yes, all of those fabulous Stanwyck movies, No Man of Her Own, Sorry, Wrong Number, The File on Thelma Jordan, those Crawford pictures like Mildred Pierce and Sudden Fear and Flamingo Road and The Damned Don't Cry and all, and lots of others. Picture that I restored called Woman on the Run with Ann Sheridan in the lead. That's a terrific film that was very overlooked. And yeah, I think women played a much bigger role in this than people realize. In the industry in general, they played a huge role, but they weren't really allowed to have the glory positions that allowed historians to focus on them right? And I've tried to kind of balance it where it makes sense, like through the work of this woman, Joan Harrison, who was Alfred Hitchcock's protege, and became a writer and producer on her own and made some terrific noir films in the 1940s, and then ended up producing Alfred Hitchcock's television show. So, I mean, that's somebody who had a major role to play in this whole crime and suspense genre, and nobody really knows about Joan Harrison at all.
Well, I have to say that it's the women in noir that pulled me in, because I grew up in the 60s, and I remember being so frustrated with like these Doris Day films and stuff that I was being told was like, oh, you know, this is what female role models should be like. And I'm like, they were so repulsive to me. And
that's strong. Don't say that about Doris Day. I love Doris Day.
Sorry, I know, but it was tough as a kid. So to me, it was like I loved characters, like I loved the Bond films with, you know, like Pussy Galore, and then noir, because the women noir, I always got this, people would, you know, push back and say like, oh, but aren't those films so misogynistic and women look so bad? And I was like, but they're in control sometimes. They may make bad choices and they may meet bad ends, and, you know, the films may not hold them up as role models, but these were women who frequently operated like men, who like were driving the plot for good or for bad. And I just was riveted by them. You know, people like Barbara Stanwyck in Double Indemnity, and Jane Greer and Out of the Past, and Lana Turner and Postman Always Rings Twice. I mean, my dad was a movie buff, and so he took me to these films when I was like a little kid, and those films just, I felt like it was such a different view that I was seeing, and it was great, and it totally sucked me in through those characters.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And they continue to exert that thrall over audiences today. I mean, my audiences for the Noir City festivals are completely mixed in terms of gender. I mean, at times I'm almost convinced there are more women in the audience than there are guys. And it's certainly true, I have found this to certainly be true, the younger the audience is. I've gone out and spoken at schools. When I'm on the road doing the Noir City festivals, I'll frequently go to colleges and sometimes even high schools, and invariably it is the young women who are taken by these films and show a real interest where it doesn't really develop for the guys until a lot later. I mean, this is true of a lot of things with men and women. And I find that there is a very, very hardcore female audience for these films based on exactly what you just described, right? Somehow the new term for this, I don't know where this came from, but now you can't read about any of this without seeing it, is female agency. I don't know where agency suddenly developed as like the go-to word for this, right? But that's exactly what Stanwyck and Joan Crawford and Rita Hayworth and Gloria Graham and all, you know, it's agency, I guess, is what they say now.
That's a far less sexy term, though.
Yeah, it's just, you know, they have power.
Yes.
You know, that's what they have. They have the power to control men, if not themselves. So, but, you know, that's a certain type of character in film noir that is eternally popular. But also when you watch enough of these films, and people who come to your series, they'll certainly come away with this, is, you know, that's not all that's in these movies in terms of the women, is not just the femme fatale. I mean, in these movies, it is clearly stated that the only hope the guy has is the right woman. And for whatever, and the right woman is always shown in these movies, right? I mean, she's a self-reliant, upstanding, self-respecting career woman, always. And the guy always makes the mistake of choosing the gold digger, the sexy gold digger instead, and it all ends up badly. I mean, it was, I find these films to be in some ways very subversive in that they were telling people at that time you're better off letting women be independent and a bit liberated and self-reliant, because they're going to be more better citizens. Right? The woman in this movie that is always the villainess is the one who, I'll just get the man to do it for me. And that's the moral of so many of these stories, really. Very timely moral, I think.
Well, and there's some interesting twists on it that you're highlighting in this festival, too. There's a film that I saw recently that I hadn't been familiar with, Wicked Woman, with Beverly Michaels.
Why is a wicked woman?
How about having a drink with me?
Can't. It's against the rules.
You've broken the rules before.
What happened?
He was reaching for something and slipped.
She has everything. And every man wants what she's got. You'll hate every vicious bone in her body, but you won't be able to get her out of your mind. Be among the first to see Beverly Michaels in a sensational performance as the girl who was stripped of all decency by uncontrollable desire.
She is a fascinating character because she's kind of the femme fatale, but she's kind of a victim, and she's doesn't necessarily have to get punished for her behavior exactly, and she's very striking, but she's an interesting kind of twist on what people may think of as the conventional femme fatale.
I totally agree. It's kind of a goofy movie in some respects, but what you're referring to is, and I don't want to give any spoilers or anything, but yes, it plays with the conventions of the femme fatale. And I would suggest that, people who think that the femme fatale is this evil character, look at some of the classic examples in these movies, like Gilda, right, where I don't think she's a femme fatale at all. I think she's just trying to survive the craziness of these two men who are in love with her. Or one of my favorite characters is Yvonne DiCarlo in a movie called Crisscross, where she basically gives the feminist manifesto at the end of the movie when she realizes that Burt Lancaster has screwed everything up, and she says, I can't help it if you don't know how to take care of yourself. I didn't ask you to do this stuff for me.
I have to get away. You don't know what you've done bringing him here. I have to pack. I have to hurry.
You're going away? You're going to leave me? Here?
How far could I get with you? What kind of a chance would we have? You can't move. You couldn't last a day. Don't you understand? You need help, doctors. You could never make it. What do you want me to do? Let him get us both? Would that make you feel happier? Does that make sense to you?
No, that'd be more.
Why did you have to come here in the first place? Why? It was all working out. Everything was fine. Paper said you'd be in the hospital for weeks.
All those things you said to me. You weren't lying. You meant it. I know you meant it. You loved me.
Love. You have to watch out for yourself. That's the way it is. I'm sorry. What do you want me to do? Throw away all this money? You always have to do what's best for yourself. That's the trouble with you. It always was from the beginning. You just don't know what kind of a world it is.
Well, I'll know better next time.
Well, people get hurt. I can't help it. I can't help it if people don't know how to take care of themselves. I'm sorry I can't be like you. I'm not like you. I wasn't born that way.
It's fantastic. It's one of my favorite scenes in film noir. And yet people will still review that film and say, it's about a woman who destroys these men. And it's like, the movie I'm watching is the opposite. It's a movie about men who destroy this woman who just was trying to get on with her life.
Well, I think sometimes people go in with a certain set of expectations and don't see beyond that. And to me, noir has always been this place where there seems to be so many layers to what's going on. And that's another reason why I think they hold up so well now, is because you can see just the surface of, what might have made them popular when they came out, and then you can read more into it and, kind of dig beneath. And they just seem to hold up well because we can keep finding new things in them.
I totally agree with that. Yes, and it's interesting because I've been doing this for a lot of years now, and it's fascinating that as a researcher and a writer, one of the things that makes the subject so interesting is exactly as you described. When you learn about the political climate of the time these movies were made, what was actually going on in Hollywood, the lives of the people making these films, all of this plays a part in the individual films and the noir movement in general, right? And so there's endlessly fascinating stuff that you can read into the movies or learn in the movies. But then here we are decades later, and you can just watch the movies as these fabulous entertainments. And it's fascinating because these movies were born of a very complex, difficult, almost a time of crisis in the country and in the movie business. And yet today people watch these as comfort food. It's like, I love these movies. It's so great to not have to, I can just escape into these movies. And it's like, well, the people who made them weren't really escaping, but that's how a lot of people interpret them today. And the truth is, Beth, you can have it both ways. I mean, when I introduce the movies, live, I'll sometimes go into the backstory of a film like The Prowler and explain politically how everybody who made this movie is going to be out of this country and blacklisted, and their careers are going to be ruined. And some people are like, wow, that's fascinating. Other people are like, shut up and show the movie. And it kind of happens on both levels, just like you're describing.
Now, in talking about kind of the things that went into making these films at the time they were made, do you feel that true noir has to be rooted in a certain time period? Or the films that are classic noirs from a certain period and are contemporary noir somehow different or in kind of a separate category?
I don't, here's my answer to that. I do believe that there was, as I've described, a movement, an artistic movement, right? And you can equate this to any kind of art form. There's the bebop movement, or there's the cubist movement, or the Dadaist movement, And because it's a movement, we clearly identify it as like, well, here's the starting point, and here's probably the end point. But that doesn't mean that it vanishes into the ether when the movement ends. I mean, it's going, that's the purpose of art, right? It's going to influence people. It's going to affect people. It's going to, you can't imagine that when Robert Towne wrote Chinatown, he wasn't thinking of these older films. He was thinking of Raymond Chandler. He was thinking of that whole period, and he did his extension of it. That's how I look at it. People do extensions of it, When I watch David Lynch movies, I see so much stuff that I think is like, this guy has definitely seen Laura, right? He's definitely seen Born to Kill. He is making direct references. He makes a direct reference to Gilda in Mulholland Drive. He's influenced by these films. Now, does that make his movies noir, or are they just under the influence of noir in some small way? I mean, I really respect the contemporary filmmakers where I can see that they've watched these movies, they've absorbed the movies, and then what they make are comments on or extensions of traditional film noir.
So what was it that made you fall in love with noir in the first place? Do you remember, how you got introduced to it?
Yeah, cutting school. Staying home and watching movies on TV instead of going to school. See, kids, it pays off in the end. No, I didn't say that. I was just fascinated with the period. It was the time period that really interested me. Because it was so different from the era in which I grew up. I mean, I came of age in San Francisco during the late 60s, early 70s, Summer of Love and hippies and all that stuff. And yet my dad, who was a public figure in San Francisco, he was a newspaper guy, a sports writer, his career was chronicled. I mean, there was a visual timeline of his career that I could look at, and it just fascinated me, in part because it was so very different from what was happening at that time, right? Beards, long hair, beads, sandals, the whole thing, and it's like, and I'm looking at all these pictures of guys in suits and overcoats and fedoras walking around on Market Street, and it's like, what was this world? So that was definitely where I started to pay attention. And then when I found these movies, I've said 100 times, it was like when I started watching noir when I was a young kid, it felt like I was watching my dad's home movies, especially the boxing ones. But that was it. I mean, there was definitely that connection. And my dad, because he was around the boxing game, guys like that I was familiar with them. You know, trainers and fighters and all this kind of stuff, and they were like right out of a film noir. So I always had a feel for it.
Did that love for noir lead you to founding the Noir Foundation?
Well, the foundation was a direct result of when we did the first festival of film noir in San Francisco. It was so successful, so unexpectedly successful, that we made a ton of money. And the first year we did it, I just did it, for the venue, and they kept all the money. And then when I said, well, this is really an amazing thing, then I had to take it seriously and treat it like a business. And so I created this foundation. We rented the theater outright so that we actually kept the box office. But I never felt like this money was mine. I really felt like, geez, what we need to do with this is use the money to save films that I want to show, that I can't show, And that's exactly what we do. And we've been doing it it's going on 12 years now that the foundation has existed. And, we've restored and or preserved like 20 movies. At least 20 movies in that time. It's a beautiful closed loop. People come, we show the film, the money that we make, we find a film that we haven't been able to show or that's at risk of being lost, we restore it, then we show that one the next year, and then people come and see that, and it perpetuates itself, and it's been a fabulous experience.
And you have some films that you're screening this year that are rare gems, films that you can't just find on DVD. Can you highlight the ones that you're showing this year?
Well, the restoration we did is a movie called The Man Who Cheated Himself that we're showing. But we try to find, these rarities. And our theme this year is we want to do genuine A and B double bills, because I have found that over the years a lot of people have a mistaken notion of what a B film is. They hear that and it's somehow a pejorative, like, oh, well, that's just a B film, Like it has something to do with the quality or something, which isn't really true. They were shorter movies made by the studios specifically for the purpose of filling out the bottom half of a double bill. And they're almost always genre pictures. They're going to be a Western or a crime movie or some kind of inexpensive adventure yarn or something at the bottom half of the double bill. And so we wanted to put, and they're never like more than 75 minutes long. That's about it for a B. But, we're showing stuff like Quiet Please Murder, which is a great Fox B. From Columbia, there's an amazing film called Address Unknown, which really isn't a true B. It's 75 minutes long. Again, written by a woman, Catherine Taylor, who wrote under the name Cressman Taylor, because so many women who wrote for these movies used men's names. Like Craig Rice is actually a woman. Marty Holland is actually a woman. And Cressman Taylor is actually a woman. And anyway, Address Unknown is a great movie about the rise of the Nazis in Europe, told in a very, very creative way. There's a movie called Jealousy that is one of the few Hollywood films by Gustav Mahdi, who is famous for making the film Ecstasy with Hedy Lamarr in the early 1930s, a film that we restored called High Tide that was a genuine B movie that is just fantastic. It's so inventive. I love it. Anyway, it's, we really go the extra mile to find and show these films that either have disappeared and we hunt them down and restore them, or they're buried deep in the vaults at the studios, and it's like, thank you, Eddie. Nobody's ever asked for that movie before,
And you mention in the subtitle for your festival this year, it says Film Noir A to B, so that's representing your A and B movies?
Correct. Correct. Yes.
Now, in programming these, how hard is it to make the decision of what to show? I mean, when we were doing it, we had 12 slots to fill, and it was agonizing because you're torn between wanting to show stuff that people probably have never seen, as well as kind of showing some of the stuff that's so deliciously good that people are familiar with, that is so much fun to see again on the big screen.
Have you, welcome to the world of programming, Beth.
It's so hard.
Have you, is this the first time you've programmed a series?
No, I've gone through the agony many times, yes.
Okay, so you know what it's all about. And, the thing is that when you've gone, it's 16 years for me in San Francisco, but it will be 20 years in April in Los Angeles, where I've shown at the Egyptian Theater in Hollywood for 20 years this April. And the trick to the programming is it's all balance. To me, it's all about balance. I have found, the A and B show is a perfect way to put a more well-known A picture out there and then pair it with something that is a real rarity. And if it's not like the greatest film ever made, I say to people, don't worry, it's only 65 minutes long, right? You'll live. But not that they aren't all interesting to me. But what I've discovered that's really fascinating is some programmers, I think, they're programming for themselves or they're programming for other programmers. So they obsessively want to find the most esoteric thing and say, nobody's ever shown this before, right? And then 14 people come to the theater, and it's like those 14 people get to feel like they're the smartest people in the world for the length of the show, right? All well and good. But the reality is the audience cycles, I kind of consider, when I watch the crowd come in, I look and I say, who's the youngest person in here? And are we getting any 15-year-olds in here? And what you have to realize is that 10 years from then, they're going to be 25 years old, right? I've been doing this for 20 years now. So I literally have had people come to my screenings when they were 13, right? And now they're 33. They're 33 years old. There's a lot of movie going in there. And I have found that it's always worth showing Mildred Pierce again. Mm-hmm. It's okay to show Double Indemnity again because there's somebody who's seeing it for the first time. Or maybe they've seen it, but they've never seen it on a movie screen before.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so, you can't just focus on the rarities and be that super discriminating programmer who says, I found a film that nobody's seen before you. So I like to, put, something like The Blue Dahlia or Double Indemnity or Mildred Pierce on a bill with a movie that nobody's seen.
Yeah, well, in looking at your schedule, the double bills are great because it seems like it has something more familiar that can entice someone in who maybe is not a hardcore noir fan, and will get them to stay for the second one, which is possibly that rare gem that they'll never see anywhere else.
Believe me, Beth, I didn't think up this strategy. This is the way the movie business worked forever.
Oh, claim the credit. You kick off the series, your festival this year, with I Wake Up Screaming. And Victor Mature stars in this. His daughter lives here in San Diego, and she's going to be coming when we screen it here in San Diego. And we were starting our series with Maltese Falcon, which a lot of people look to as kind of kicking off the the noir cycle, and she goes like, no, maybe you should consider my dad's film as the first one, and she sent me an article about it. So you're kicking off your series with that. Are you going to be addressing that kind of idea in any way?
Well, Victoria is going to be at my screening.
Yes,
so
she's getting around.
She's working pretty good on her dad's behalf.
Yes.
That's not bad. Good going, Victoria. I mean, she did not consult with me before I did this, but she saw it and said, "Wow, this is great. Can I come?" So yeah, she will be at the screening in San Francisco as well.
And are you kind of
She's
addressing?
delightful.
Yes, she is. And are you addressing in any way, like whether or not the dispute or the debate between I Wake Up Screaming and Maltese Falcon?
There is no dispute.
There's no dispute.
It's the reality is, a movement has to gain traction, right? So more than one film has to be made, right? I mean, I Wake Up Screaming looks much more like a film noir than the Maltese Falcon, but the Maltese Falcon was the huge success.
Yes.
And Humphrey Bogart, his attitude in that film is what set the tone for the entire film noir movement. I mean, it's that character of Sam Spade is what the American public responded to, right? I won't play the sap for you and all that. That's legendary. There's really nothing about I Wake Up Screaming that's legendary, but it certainly had the look and it had the feel of noir. The flashback story, the whole thing. I Wake Up Screaming was a huge, the novel was a huge influence on Vera Casperay, another woman, who wrote Laura. The novel Laura was inspired by Steve Fisher's novel I Wake Up Screaming. So this is how a movement builds. You get these artists all kind of influencing and inspiring each other, and then it happens. And I'm much more interested in how that works than I'm interested in saying, well, this is the first one, obviously, and anybody who doesn't think so is stupid. It's like, who cares? Who cares what the first one is? Let's go back to the cave paintings and find the first example of noir on the caves.
And you're ending the festival with a film I love, which is Big Heat. And there's so much good stuff in this film. You've got Gloria Graham, you've got a young Lee Marvin. What is it about this film that you particularly enjoy?
I enjoy the story. William P. McGivern was the guy who wrote this. He was a crime reporter turned novelist, and he wrote a really tight, brilliantly structured revenge drama that is like, I've always referred to it as the Dirty Harry of the Eisenhower era, and that's really what it is. And I think Glenn Ford is perfect in this film, and the combination of his really tough, stoic guy on a mission, that character contrasted with Gloria Graham's sort of dopey, funny, but just as wounded character. It's great, and she's fantastic, and it's obviously one of Fritz Lang's best films that he made in America. This is the first time I've shown it in San Francisco at a noir festival, so it finally was the perfect time.
And you're also showing a Hitchcock film, The Shadow of the Doubt, and a lot of people, I think, kind of pigeonhole Hitchcock as master of suspense and think of him in a very particular way, but he really has done some quality noir films. Well,
I certainly think so. And I know there are people who say, well, Hitchcock's his own thing. You can't classify him as film noir, but I don't know, Shadow of a Doubt, Strangers on a Train, I Confess, The Wrong Man, these all strike me as being stories that are completely noir. And, of course, Strangers on a Train, written by Patricia Highsmith, woman, thank you very much. And, of course, my favorite film of all time, In a Lonely Place, based on a novel written by Dorothy Hughes, a woman, thank you very much. So, I just, with the Hitchcock thing, a lot of his scripts, of course, worked on by his wife, Alma Reville. There you go. I have no qualms saying that a lot of the darker, even Vertigo, I will put on the list as a film that to me seems to be very much a noir, as opposed to things like North by Northwest and the kind of adventurous, fun Hitchcock movies. I'll even go so far as to argue that in my book Dark City, I ended it with Psycho, saying that Psycho to me symbolically represented the end of the noir era, because the movie starts out as a film noir and it ends up as a horror movie. Mm-hmm. And it's like at a certain point, the psychology trips over into this psychopathology thing that was beyond anything that noir was ever about, and then it becomes horror. But the start of that film with Marion Crane deciding if she's going to rob the thing and escape, and that's a classic noir setup, and it goes along feeling just like a film noir until she takes that shower, and then it becomes something else. And of course, as a writer, you're always looking for like the moment, the pivotal moment, and it's like there it is when cinema changed. It changed in that shower, and who knows, maybe.
So your festival, Noir City, is going to be running January 26th to February 4th at the Castro Theater in San Francisco. So if people can't get to the festival, which is a little bit of a haul sometimes, but they can enjoy noir with you every Sunday on TCM. So tell us about that.
Yes. It's fantastic. I mean, I've had a long, I guess I can say that now, I've had a long, lovely relationship with Turner Classic Movies, going back to the early days of this century, and I was just thrilled when they finally said, "Well, how would you just like to do your own show?" And it's been greater than I ever expected. They built me my own set. It's absolutely fantastic, and I'm really enjoying doing this. I mean, you work very, very hard to fill a movie theater and get like 1,000 people in there to watch a film, and then you do this stuff for TCM, and you realize you're reaching like incredible amounts of people. And I, of course, am watching it on my couch at home and realizing, wow, a lot of people are looking at this right now. But it's great, and it's fun to be part of what TCM is doing, because as it has turned out, the network is sort of the gatekeeper of America's movie legacy, right? I mean, that's what TCM is now. And so while it's great fun, I also take it quite seriously, because this is, I hope, how a lot of younger people are going to experience classic cinema these days. There just aren't the number of rep cinemas that existed when I was growing up. I mean, I had to go searching on TV pre-cable to find these movies when I was a kid, and now all I have to do is just watch TCM, and it's like, this is fantastic, So I'm very thrilled that they asked me to do this, and I'm having a ball, and it seems that people are enjoying it very much.
Well, it always gives me great pleasure to wake up Sunday morning and see Noir Alley trending on Twitter, and
isn't that something? Yes.
Well, it's
old movies trending on Twitter,
and I
love that.
And it's so appropriate that it's on a Sunday, because it feels like church. You can just go in and worship. Well,
I'm glad you say that, because some people wonder, like, why Sunday morning? Why Sunday morning? And it makes sense to me. I think that the audience that I really would love to reach are people who are more likely to watch on a Sunday morning, to be quite honest. So it always made sense to me.
Well, what better time? You can be a little hungover from Saturday night. You can be maybe contemplating sins and moral transgressions, and perfect for a Sunday morning.
There you go. Some of these movies are just like your Sunday sermon.
Well, I want to thank you very much for taking time to talk to me. And hopefully we're going to get you down here for one of our films to introduce
That
them.
will happen. I am certain that will happen.
I think it might be This Gun for Hire, so in March. So hopefully we'll be seeing you down here, and you can chat with our lovely fans at our group is called Film Geeks San Diego, and we do year-long programming at this little micro cinema. So we're a little nerdy about our films.
That's good. It sounds great. I look forward to meeting you and seeing you then.
All right. Well, thanks very much. And also let people know where they can. You're very accessible on social media. So where can people find you?
Where do they find at Noir Alley? Or Eddie Muller? I mean, it's funny when you say, "How do they find it?" It's like, I don't know. Do you type? I guess you type in my name. I think that's really how you do it. Either on Facebook or Twitter, or you can do that at Noir Alley, or you can do it at the Film Noir Foundation. No aliases with me. I don't hide on social media. I'm not anonymous on social media. So if you want to find me, it's really, really easy.
And where can people find information about the film festival if they want to get a ticket?
Noircity.com.
All right.
It's as simple as that.
Well, thank you again. It's been wonderful talking about noir, which is a genre or style. There's that argument too.
Yeah, good. You caught yourself there, Beth. Yes, that opens up a whole other can of worms.
I know, that's a whole other can of worms. We can talk about that another time.
Okay.
But it's something that I adore, and I'm so glad that I had a chance to speak with you.
It was entirely my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to another edition of listener-supported KPBS Cinema Junkie podcast. Once again, I want to thank my guest, Eddie Muller. You can find him every Sunday morning on TCM's Noir Alley, and his film festival, Noir City, will kick off January 26th in San Francisco. And I'm excited to announce that the noir series that I've been working on with Film Geeks SD will kick off on January 28th at the Digital Gym Cinema. For that series, there will be a noir one Sunday a month, and those will be kind of classic noir. And then every other month, we'll be showcasing a contemporary noir on a Monday night. So if you want more information, go to the Film Geeks SD page on Facebook. Till our next Film Fix, I'm Beth Accomando, your resident cinema junkie.
KPBS On Demand is supported by Splatero, helping homeowners pay off debt by offering streamlined access to your home's equity with no additional monthly payments or new debt. Splatero provides a lump sum of payment in exchange for a share of your home's future value. Pre-qualification is available at Splatero.com.